I know what I saw. And I ain't the kind of man to say that lightly. You spend your whole life thinking miracles are for someone else, for books, for movies, for Sunday morning sermons. But that day, that tornado, there was a moment I can't explain. Something happened out there in Joplin that don't fit into any box I ever believed in. And if I close my eyes, I can still see his face, covered in dust, smiling like he knew something I didn't. My name's Dave Delaney. I'm 67 years old, born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I spent 32 years with the Tulsa Police Department, retired 10 years ago, but let me tell you, even after the badge comes off, the job stays with you, not in the uniform, but in your gut, in your eyes. You don't stop seeing things. You don't stop feeling responsible. People think retirement means fishing trips and lawn chairs. And yeah, sure, I got my little habits. I go down to the diner every Tuesday morning, get the same damn thing, scrambled eggs and burnt coffee. I play dominoes with a couple other old-timers at the VFW on Thursdays, but mostly, I stay quiet. I walk slow. I try not to think too much about the stuff I saw. Some of it still wakes me up in the middle of the night. I never married. Came close once. Her name was Sherry. We were young. I was just starting out in patrol. But this job, it don't make room for much else. You miss birthdays, holidays. You get cold. You get distant. I didn't mean to be that way, but I was. After Sherry left, I just poured myself into the job. That's what I knew how to do. I worked hard, tried to do things right. I wasn't perfect, made my share of bad calls. But I always tried to do what was right, even when it wasn't easy. Sometimes, especially when it wasn't easy. When I hit 60, I knew it was time. My back was shot. My knees, too. And the world, it was changing fast. Felt like every day there was more paperwork and less time to just help people. That's what I always believed the badge was for, helping folks, even when they didn't want your help. Especially then. After I retired, I moved into a smaller place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just quiet. I started volunteering at a food pantry on weekends. Sometimes drove supplies up north when storms hit, just to feel useful. That's how I ended up in Joplin. This was May 2011. I'd heard on the radio that a bad system was rolling in. One of the ladies at the pantry, Nancy, her sister lived in Joplin, said they were short on blankets and canned goods, so I loaded up the truck and headed out that morning. It was just supposed to be a quick trip. Drop off the supplies, maybe help them organize some shelves, then head back before the weather got ugly. But weather don't always follow the plan. Neither does life. I wasn't wearing a badge anymore. Wasn't carrying a sidearm. Didn't have a partner watching my back. But that day, something in me clicked back on. It's funny. You think once you hang it up, you're done. But you're never really done. That storm, that tornado, it changed everything. And what happened after? What I saw, it's hard to talk about. Not because I'm scared. I've been through worse. But because I don't think people will believe me. Hell, sometimes I don't believe it myself. But I know what I saw. And I know what I felt. And that man, that homeless man I pulled out from under all that wreckage, he said something to me I'll never forget. Words that still echo when everything else goes quiet. I didn't go to Joplin looking for redemption. I didn't go looking for meaning or miracles. But maybe, just maybe, sometimes they come looking for you. Life slows down in retirement, whether you want it to or not. After I turned in my badge, the first 6 months felt like I was missing something every morning. I'd wake up before the sun, reach for my duty belt on instinct, realize it wasn't there, and just sit. Stare at the wall for a while. You get so used to structure. The shift changes, the radio chatter, the smell of old leather in the patrol car, the adrenaline, the purpose, and then suddenly it's gone. No sirens, no calls, no one depending on you. Some guys handle that better than others. Me? I struggled with it. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt useless. It's hard to go from being the one people call when shit hits the fan to being the old man no one really needs. My days looked mostly the same. I'd wake up early, still couldn't sleep past 5:30, even without an alarm. I'd take a walk around the neighborhood, coffee in hand, nod at the same 2 or 3 neighbors who were up that early. Then I'd head to the diner, the one on 11th and Garnett. Used to be called Deb's, now it's Lou's Place. Doesn't matter, still the same cracked vinyl booths and burnt toast. I'd sit in the same spot, corner seat by the window, watch the cars pass, watch people hustle to jobs I used to know the ins and outs of. A couple of the waitresses knew I was retired law. They'd call me Officer Dave, even though I told them they didn't have to. Guess some habits stick for both sides. After breakfast, most days I'd run errands or read the paper front to back. Sometimes I'd volunteer. That food pantry on 31st was where I found a little meaning again. It wasn't exciting, no high-stakes moments or anything, but it gave me something to do, something that felt helpful. Stocking shelves, packing bags, loading boxes, and the people who came in, they weren't so different from the ones I used to see out on patrol, struggling, tired, overlooked. Sometimes they'd recognize me. Weren't you the one who helped my brother get clean back in '98? Or didn't you work the Jefferson shooting? I'd nod, maybe smile, but mostly I just listened. There was this one guy, Paul, who came in every Thursday for a can of soup and some peanut butter. Lived in his car. I asked him once what he used to do, and he told me he was a nurse, lost everything in a divorce. It hit me hard, how close we all are to the edge, even when we think we're stable. That's part of what kept me showing up. Now, about Joplin. The week before that storm, I remember we'd had some heavy rain here in Tulsa. Roads were slick. Sirens were going off more than usual. Even without the uniform, your ears still perk up at that sound. That itch to go, to respond, it never leaves you. At the pantry, we'd been talking about Joplin a lot. Nancy, the lady who ran the place, had a sister who lived up there and said they were expecting some bad weather. They'd been having supply issues. Said the shelters were low on food, blankets, bottled water. I didn't think twice. I told Nancy I could load up my pickup and drive it over. It was just a couple hours. I had nothing else going on. And honestly, I wanted the drive. Something about the road always cleared my head. So that Sunday morning, I got up early, earlier than usual. Packed the truck with cases of canned beans, rice, some baby formula, and blankets we had in surplus. Didn't bring much else, just a thermos of coffee and my old police flashlight, force of habit. The sky looked clear when I left. Little cloudy, sure, but nothing ominous. I figured I'd be there by mid-morning and home before supper. The drive started off peaceful. Flat roads, light traffic. That kind of empty highway that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. I had the radio on low. Classic rock, nothing fancy. Somewhere around Vinita, the signal started getting patchy. By the time I was near Joplin, you could feel it. That pressure in the air. I've been around enough to know when weather's about to turn, there's a stillness that comes right before something big. Animals get quiet, air gets heavy. You can't hear it, but you can feel it in your bones, like the earth's holding its breath. I got to the shelter just outside the city around 10:30 a.m. They were grateful for the supplies. A few volunteers were unloading my truck when I noticed the sky changing. Fast. Dark clouds rolled in like they were chasing each other. The wind picked up sharp, not just breezy, I mean violent. You could see people starting to panic. I offered to help secure some of the loose tents and tarps outside. Didn't feel like much at the time, just doing what I could. One of the volunteers, a young woman named Beth, came up to me around noon and said, "You should head out before it gets worse." But I didn't. Something made me stay. Maybe it was that instinct again. That old gut cop feeling that something bad was about to go down and I shouldn't be on the road when it did. So I stayed close, watched the sky turn almost green, listened to the emergency radio start going nuts, shelter workers running back and forth trying to move folks inside. That's when the sirens started, and that sound, it doesn't matter how many times you've heard it, tornado sirens cut straight through you, people yelling, some crying. I remember grabbing an old man's arm and helping him inside the shelter. He looked so confused, kept asking where his dog was. I never saw the tornado coming, not with my eyes, but you could hear it. A low roar, like a freight train mixed with a growl. And then, the sky opened up. I remember holding onto the doorframe as the wind hit. Dust and debris flying, people screaming. It was chaos. And it wasn't over in seconds, like they say. It felt like it lasted forever. And when it passed, that's when everything changed. It's strange what your brain holds on to in a crisis. You'd think I'd remember the roar or the screaming first, but what I remember most was the silence right after. The kind of silence that feels wrong, like the world forgot to hit play again. 1 minute the wind's howling, metals twisting, people are ducked and bracing. Next thing you know, it's just gone. Dead quiet. I was still standing in the entrance of the shelter, hands gripping the frame so tight my knuckles were white. I looked around and realized I couldn't hear a damn thing. Not even my own breathing at first. Dust everywhere. Like fog. Thick, gritty. You couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. I stepped outside and everything looked wrong. The shelter was still standing mostly, thank God. But all around us, it was just destruction. Buildings flattened. Cars flipped. One truck was upside down in what used to be a parking lot. Power lines hung like dead snakes across the road. Trees snapped in half like toothpicks. And the smell, I don't know how to describe it. Dirt, gas, insulation, burnt rubber, mixed with that weird smell you only get when something big breaks open. I didn't hear crying right away. That took a minute, but when it started, it didn't stop. People crawling out of ditches, blood on their faces. A man limping holding a girl no older than 6, barefoot, no pants, just a t-shirt and bruises. It looked like a war zone. And I just stood there trying to get my bearings. No badge, no radio, just me. But instincts kicked in. I started calling out, asking if anyone needed help. There was so much confusion. People walking around in circles, shocked. Some were screaming names. One woman was yelling, "Mikey, Mikey," over and over, and I still hear that voice sometimes when I close my eyes. I found a busted-up cart, turned it into a makeshift stretcher, helped carry an old lady with a broken leg back inside the shelter, wrapped a towel around a teenager's arm. It was cut deep, probably needed stitches. I just held pressure and told him to stay awake. I kept moving. You had to. The second you stop and let it all sink in, you freeze. And freezing helps nobody. Now, about 30 minutes after it hit, could have been less, could have been more, I lost track. I noticed something strange. There was this alleyway between 2 buildings that were barely standing. Half a brick wall still upright, wires hanging down, one side completely caved in. And through all that mess, I heard something. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. A voice, low, repeating something. I moved toward it. Had to climb over a downed fence and duck under some hanging beams. Dust still thick. Couldn't see much. But as I got closer, I made it out. He was praying, soft, calm. I remember thinking, why the hell is someone praying right now? And then I saw him. He was pinned, lying flat on his back, half covered in bricks and what looked like a metal shelving unit. One leg was twisted under debris, blood running down his arm. He was older, maybe 50s, black man, long grey beard, clothes torn, covered in soot and insulation. But his eyes, They were calm, not scared, not panicked, just still. I got down low and said, "Sir, can you hear me?" He looked right at me and said, "I've been waiting for you." That stopped me cold. I didn't know what the hell to make of that. I said, "You hurt bad?" He nodded slightly. "Can't feel my leg, but I think I'm still here." I told him, "All right, we're gonna get you out. Just hang on." I started clearing what I could, piece by piece. The shelving was too heavy alone, so I wedged a pipe under it like a lever. It took everything I had. I was sweating. My hands were shaking. Every time something shifted, I was terrified it'd collapse more. He just lay there, watching me. At one point, I cussed out loud enough, and he chuckled. Actually chuckled, said, "Don't worry, officer. You're doing God's work now." That hit me in the chest. I hadn't told him I used to be a cop, didn't have any badge, didn't look like one. Hell, I was wearing jeans and an old OSU sweatshirt. I paused and asked, "How'd you know I was police?" He said, "It's in the way you talk, the way you move, I can tell." I didn't answer, just went back to lifting. Took me maybe 15 minutes to free his leg. It was mangled, sure, but still attached. I asked him his name. He said, "Elias." I said, "All right, Elias, I'm Dave. Let's get you out of here." I pulled him out slow. He winced but didn't scream. The second we cleared the rubble, the whole side of the wall collapsed behind us. Another few seconds, and we'd both have been under it. We sat there in the dust, breathing hard, and he looked at me again, straight into my eyes, said, "You weren't supposed to be here, but you came anyway." And I swear to you I felt something in that moment. Not chills, not fear, just stillness, like time slowed down. I said, "Guess we're both lucky." And he said, "No, this ain't luck." I helped him up, one arm around my shoulder, limping. We started walking back toward the shelter, and he kept saying something under his breath. I asked, "What are you saying?" He said, "Thank you," over and over. And then he said, "I prayed for someone to find me, and then you showed up." I didn't say anything, didn't know what to say. Walking Elias back to the shelter wasn't easy. He was leaning heavy on me, and every few steps I could feel his leg give a little, like it might fold or just stop working altogether. I told him we'd stop if he needed to, but he just kept shaking his head. "No time," he'd say. "We go." The path we took back wasn't a road anymore. It was rubble. Boards, wires, broken glass everywhere. I had to step slow, real deliberate, so I wouldn't twist my own ankle or worse. Elias didn't talk much after that first stretch. He just looked around, taking it all in, I guess. There was a moment we passed what used to be a convenience store. You could still see the rack of candy bars half buried under drywall. He looked at it and said, "Used to sleep behind there some nights." I stopped and turned. "You lived around here?" He nodded. "Sometimes, when the shelters were full." Something about the way he said that. Like he wasn't ashamed. Just matter of fact. That got to me. We kept moving. I was sweating hard now, breathing through my mouth, trying to ignore the metallic taste in the air. At one point, a kid came running toward us, maybe 8 or 9 years old, covered in dirt and crying. He yelled, "My mom's gone, I can't find her." I wanted to stop. Every instinct in me screamed to help the kid, but I looked at Elias. He was swaying, pale, barely hanging on. I said to the boy, "The shelter's just down the road, run that way. They'll help you." He nodded and took off, barefoot, limping. It tore me up, watching him go. But Elias needed me right then. I had to stay focused. When we got within sight of the shelter, I saw some volunteers outside. They were setting up a triage area. People on blankets, some hooked up to IVs already. A nurse spotted us and ran over. "Jesus," she said, "where'd you find him?" "Back behind the old hardware place," I said. He was pinned. They brought over a stretcher, gently laid Elias down. He winced, but didn't cry out. Just closed his eyes. One of the EMTs asked, "Was he responsive?" "Yeah," I said. "Clear, oriented, legs busted, but he was talking." They nodded and wheeled him inside. I just stood there watching them go, dust in my throat. Hands scraped raw, sweat dripping off my chin. And I remember thinking, why him? Why was he still alive under all that? I'd seen folks pulled from less and not make it. Hell, I'd seen guys die from a piece of drywall to the neck, but Elias, buried under half a building, made it out calm, alert, even thankful. I went over to a folding chair and sat down hard. One of the volunteers brought me a bottle of water. I cracked it open and chugged like I hadn't had a drink in hours, which I hadn't. I don't know how long I sat there. But after a while, the nurse who took Elias came back. "He's stable," she said. "Bad fracture, but we got him on fluids and pain meds." I asked, "He say anything?" She looked at me strange. "Just that you were the answer." I blinked. "The answer to what?" She shrugged. "Didn't say, just kept saying, 'He came. I knew he would.' Like he'd been expecting you." That gave me a chill. I didn't tell her what he said back there, didn't mention the prayer, or how he somehow knew I used to be a cop. I didn't know what to make of it myself. But I stood up, said thank you. Then I walked back out toward the area I'd pulled him from. Call it stubbornness or curiosity, or maybe something more. I just needed to see it again. To prove to myself it really happened. When I got there, I couldn't believe it. The whole section where Elias had been trapped. It was gone. Collapsed entirely. Steel beams, cinder blocks, all of it came down. There was no way he'd have survived that if I'd come 5 minutes later. Hell, even 2 minutes. I walked around the debris carefully and spotted the spot where I'd first heard him praying. There was a piece of broken wood, scorched on one end. Looked like it might have been part of a pew or something. On the side, in faint faded lettering, it said, St. Matthew's. I didn't realize it then, but I learned later that alley had been the backside of a little abandoned church. Used to run soup kitchens out of it back in the 80s. It had been shut down for years. And I don't know. Something about that stuck with me. He was praying, in the ruins of a church, waiting. And I just happened to be there, a retired cop from another state bringing blankets. I ain't a religious man. Never have been. But that day made me question a whole lot. I went back to the shelter, found Elias resting with a bandage around his head and his leg braced. He opened his eyes when he saw me. Weak smile. "I knew you'd come back," he said. I sat next to him. Didn't say much, just looked at him. And he said something I still don't understand. Not fully. "You think you saved me," he whispered. But it was the other way around. I went back the next morning. Didn't sleep much that night. Kept thinking about that spot behind the old church. Kept hearing his voice. "You think you saved me." But it was the other way around. It stuck in my head like a song lyric you don't understand, but can't stop repeating. I kept turning it over. What the hell did he mean by that? I'm the one who dragged him out of the rubble. I'm the one who cut my hands lifting beams and crawling through broken glass. I'm the one who risked getting crushed. How the hell did he save me? I told myself I'd go back just to check on him. That's all. Just a follow-up. See how he was doing. Maybe bring him some clean socks or something. But deep down, I knew that wasn't why I went. I needed answers, even if I didn't know the questions. The shelter was calmer in the morning, still busy but less chaos. People sitting outside, eating from plastic trays. Volunteers setting up more cots. I walked around until I found the makeshift infirmary. He was sitting up, back propped by pillows, eating what looked like oatmeal. When he saw me, he grinned. "Dave," he said. like he'd been expecting me. I sat down on the edge of the cot next to him. "How you feeling?" I asked. "Like I got hit by a church," he said, laughing soft. Then, serious again. "But I'm still here." I nodded, looked at the floor. He put the spoon down and said, "You want to ask me something?" I hesitated. Then I said, "What did you mean when you said it was the other way around?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at me. Not in a weird way, not judging, but in that kind of way that makes you feel like the other person's already been where you are, like they've felt your questions before you ever spoke 'em. He said, "You ever lose your way, Dave?" I blinked, didn't expect that. He went on, "Not just physically, not like getting lost in the woods. I mean inside, like you've been walking for years but forgot where you were going, or why you even started." I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He saw it in my face. I'd felt that for a long time. Even before retirement. Maybe since Sherry left. Maybe since I stopped believing people could change. Or since I stopped trying to. He said, "I've been lost plenty. Slept on sidewalks. Got jumped behind gas stations. Ain't had a warm bed in years. But I never felt more alone than I did under that rubble." Then he looked straight at me, and I'll never forget his eyes. Dark, steady, no panic, no fear, but full of something I can't name. Something deep, heavy. He said, "I asked God not to let me die alone. I didn't ask to be saved, I just didn't want to die forgotten in the dirt, like I didn't matter." His voice cracked then. Not loud, just barely. But I heard it. He cleared his throat, kept going. "And then, you showed up, out of nowhere. No sirens, no uniform, just some old guy in a hoodie crawling through glass for a stranger." He smiled a little. Made me believe I still mattered, even for just 5 more minutes. I sat real still, felt something shift inside me. I said, "I wasn't supposed to be here, Elias. I'm from Tulsa. I was just dropping off supplies." He said, "Ain't that something?" Then he said the part that got me. He leaned in and said, "Quiet. You needed to remember who you were." I felt a lump rise in my throat. Didn't speak. Couldn't. He said, "You spent your life helping people. You forgot that. Or maybe you stopped believing it mattered." I wanted to argue. Wanted to say he was wrong. That I'd been doing fine. That I had my routine, my volunteer shifts, my peace and quiet. But I couldn't say it. Because deep down I knew he was right. I had been walking in circles, going through the motions, staying busy, staying quiet, but not really living. Not like before. Not like when I used to walk into a call not knowing if I'd walk out again. When I used to look someone in the eye and say, "I got you," and mean it. Somewhere along the line I'd buried that man. And Elias. He dug him back up. He didn't save me with a miracle. He saved me with meaning. By letting me be needed again. By reminding me that even without a badge, I still had a purpose. I looked at him and said, "Thank you." He chuckled. "For what? I was just laying there." I shook my head. "No. For waiting. For believing someone was coming." He looked away, real quiet. Then he said, "Sometimes that's all you can do." We sat like that for a while. 2 old men in a disaster zone. One with a broken leg, one with a heavy heart, and something passed between us. Not words, just understanding. That night I drove home, didn't turn the radio on, didn't stop for food, just drove. And I kept thinking about that moment, that look in his eyes, that calm, steady look, like he knew me, knew why I came, knew what I needed before I did. And that phrase, "You needed to remember who you were." It still echoes in my chest. Because he was right. I wasn't just lost. I was tired, worn down, forgotten by myself. And that one moment, that one man, he gave it back to me. Not with a miracle from the sky, but by simply needing me. The weirdest part about coming home after something like that is how normal everything looks. Same traffic lights, same grocery store, same guy walking his dog like he always does. But you're not the same. You pull into your driveway, turn off the engine, and just sit there. Hands still gripping the wheel like you're afraid to let go. That's how I felt pulling into my place after Joplin. I remember just sitting there for maybe 10 minutes, engine off, staring at the mailbox. I kept thinking, what the hell just happened? The whole thing, the drive, the storm, Elias, the look in his eyes. It stayed with me, still does. But that first week back, I didn't tell anyone. Didn't talk to my buddies at the VFW, didn't mention it at the diner, didn't call Nancy from the food pantry to give her an update. I didn't want to hear myself say it out loud. Because saying it meant admitting it changed me, and I wasn't ready for that. I kept picturing the moment that wall collapsed just after I'd pulled Elias out. If I'd hesitated even 5 seconds. That kind of thing messes with your head, makes you question everything. Why him and not someone else? Why was I even there? What if I hadn't gone? The what-ifs don't stop. And it wasn't just the wall. It was his voice, his calm. The way he said he'd been waiting, like he knew I'd come. That haunted me more than anything, because I've seen death. I've seen panic, desperation, people begging you to save them. But this guy, he wasn't begging. He believed, and it made me realize I'd stopped believing a long time ago. Not just in God, in people. That job, it grinds you down. You start out full of hope, full of purpose, wanting to do good. Then you see the worst. Day after day, year after year. And slowly, without even noticing, you start putting up walls. You stop feeling as much because it hurts too damn bad. You stop trusting people because they lie. You stop hoping because disappointment always comes next, and I think that's what Elias saw in me. Not just a man who used to be a cop, but a man who'd forgotten what it meant to serve with heart. I couldn't shake that. I'd lie in bed at night and hear him whispering, "You needed to remember who you were." Sometimes I'd wake up in a sweat, thinking I was back there, crawling through that alley, dust in my throat, praying I'd find someone alive. Other nights, I'd wake up hearing the silence, that stillness right after the storm passed, where everything felt broken, but not gone. I started writing it down, not for anyone else, just for me. Little notes on napkins, on the back of grocery receipts. I'd write, Elias, May 22, 2011, behind the old church. Or, he knew I was police. Or just, I still see his eyes. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I was afraid I'd forget. Maybe part of me hoped that putting it on paper would make it make sense, but it never really did. One afternoon, maybe 2 weeks later, I got a call. It was a woman from the shelter in Joplin. Said her name was Angela. She'd been helping with the medical evac teams. She said, "Elias asked me to call you." I sat up straight. "Is he all right?" "He's healing," she said. "They moved him to a long-term care center. He wanted to say thank you, again." I asked if I could talk to him. She paused. "He's sleeping now, but I'll let him know you called." Then she added something soft, almost like she wasn't sure if she should say it. "He said you saved more than his life. He said you helped him remember he mattered." I just sat there, phone to my ear, staring at the wall. I'd been so focused on what he gave me, I didn't stop to think maybe it went both ways. That maybe we pulled each other out. 2 men, both buried, One by bricks, one by years. That thought stayed with me. And slowly, I started talking about it. Told one of the guys at the VFW over a beer. He said, "That's heavy, man. You ever think maybe it wasn't a coincidence?" I didn't answer him then. Still don't know the answer now. Told Nancy from the pantry next. She cried. Said it was the kind of story people need to hear. But I didn't want to be anyone's inspiration. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just showed up. That's the part no one talks about. Sometimes all it takes is showing up, being there, getting your hands dirty, not turning away when things look too far gone. And maybe that's what Elias meant. Maybe saving someone doesn't always look like dragging them out of a fire. Maybe sometimes it's just letting them know they're seen. He saw me. I saw him. That's what stuck. Not the storm, not the rubble. Him. He mattered. And he reminded me that I did too. I still don't tell this story to just anyone. Most people wouldn't get it. They'd nod, say, "Wow," maybe offer a half-hearted, "That's amazing." But they wouldn't feel it. Only folks who've been in it, who've seen, would understand. And if you're watching this, and you've ever felt forgotten or lost or like you don't matter anymore, I want you to hear me. You do. You matter. Even when it's quiet. Even when no one's watching. Even when the storm's already passed, you still matter. It's been years now. More than a decade since that tornado tore through Joplin. You'd think time would dull the edges, make it all fade a little. But it doesn't. Some things, they settle into you. Not like a wound, not exactly. More like a weight. Quiet, steady. Always there when the room goes still. There are nights when I'm washing dishes or folding laundry, just regular stuff, and my mind drifts back to that alley. The sound of my boots crunching through broken glass, the smell of plaster dust and rain. That voice, Elias, calm as anything, saying, "I've been waiting for you." I hear that more than I care to admit. It wasn't the words so much as the way he said it. Like I was part of something I didn't understand yet. Like the moment had been waiting for me, not the other way around. I'm not one to talk much about fate. Never cared for big ideas or mystical talk. But after that day, I started to question a few things. Started wondering if maybe the things we chalk up to luck or timing are something more. If maybe, just maybe, we're put in certain places at certain times for a reason we don't get to know right away. I look back now, and I can see the cracks that led me there. How I was feeling before the storm. The quiet drift I'd fallen into. I wasn't falling apart. Nothing dramatic like that. But I was fading. Slowly, softly. Waking up each day, doing my routine, diner, groceries, laundry, maybe some time at the pantry. It looked like a life from the outside. But inside, I was shrinking. That's what Elias interrupted, not just with his words, though those hit deep, but with his need. There's something about being needed, really needed. It brings you back to life. I didn't realize how long it had been since someone looked at me like I was their last hope. I used to see that look all the time when I was on the job. A kid in the back of a squad car, scared to death. A woman hiding behind a broken door, hoping her abuser wouldn't come back. A man bleeding out in a gas station parking lot, locking eyes with you like, "Please, don't let this be the end." You carry those eyes with you. They never leave. But after a while, after retirement, no one looks at you like that anymore. You're just the old guy who walks slow at the grocery store. The one who always leaves exact change at the counter. The guy at the diner who eats alone and tips too much. You stop being someone people turn to, and you start being invisible. But Elias, he saw me. And more than that, he reminded me that I wasn't done yet. That I still had something in me. Still had the ability to make a difference. Even if it was just for one person, on one day, in the middle of the worst moment of their life, that stays with a man. Every now and then I'll drive past a church or see someone wrapped in a blanket by a city bench, and it all comes back. Sometimes I pull over, just sit there watching. Not because I expect to see him again. I know better than that. But because I need to sit in that space for a minute, remind myself not to go numb again. After the storm, I started volunteering more. Not just at the pantry, but at the shelter downtown. I started talking to people, listening, not trying to fix them, just being there. And the crazy thing is, the more I did that, the more I felt whole again. Funny how that works. I think a lot about how we measure our worth. When you're in uniform, you've got medals, promotions, radio calls. You know when you've done your job. But out here, after all that's gone, how do you know you still matter? Elias gave me that answer. It's in the quiet moments. It's in the hand you hold. It's in showing up. That's all he needed that day. Someone to show up. Someone to reach through the dust and say, I see you. And in doing that for him, he did the same for me. I still have a picture of the alley. Took it 2 weeks after when I went back. It's just rubble. Nothing special. You wouldn't look twice at it. But to me, it's sacred ground. Because something shifted there. Something that changed the way I carry myself. I don't talk about it often. Most folks wouldn't get it. But sometimes, when someone's going through something, when they're feeling lost, I'll tell them about Elias, not the miracle part. I leave that out. Just the part where two men, both broken in different ways, helped each other stand up again. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just saying, I've learned that meaning doesn't come in big waves. It comes in small moments, in quiet choices, in how we respond when no one's watching. I've still got scars on my hands from that day. Little ones, barely visible. But I see them, and I remember. Not the pain, not the panic, the connection. And maybe that's the point of all this. Not to save the world, not to be a hero, but to recognize the moments when we can reach out and be someone to somebody. That's what Elias taught me. And I carry it with me every single day. If you've listened to everything I've said up to now, I want to thank you. Not a lot of folks have the patience to sit with something that doesn't have a clean ending. This story don't tie up with a bow. No hero, no parade, no big headline. Just a man, crawling through dust, trying to help someone he never met. But maybe that's the point. Maybe most of the important moments in life look exactly like that. Unremarkable from the outside, unforgettable from the inside. I didn't tell this story to impress anyone. I'm not interested in pats on the back. I've had medals pinned to my chest before. Some I deserved, some I probably didn't. None of them ever made me feel the way I did sitting next to Elias that night. And I guess what I really want to say is this. You never know when your moment's coming. You can go years thinking your best days are behind you, thinking the world's done with you, thinking nobody needs you anymore. But then one day, you hear a voice in the rubble, and something inside you wakes up. Maybe you're not a cop. Maybe you're not the kind of person who runs into danger. That doesn't matter. You don't have to save someone from a tornado to change a life. You just have to show up. You just have to be the kind of person who doesn't look away when someone's in pain, who listens when someone needs to be heard, who says, I'm here, even when it's hard. I think we've lost a little of that in the world. Too much noise, too much fear. Everybody's looking out for themselves, staying in their lane. But what if we stepped out of our lane for a second? What if we stopped and asked the guy sitting alone at the diner if he's okay? What if we bought the woman on the sidewalk a sandwich without needing to post about it? It don't take much. Just a little presence. A little humanity. That's what Elias gave me. More than I ever gave him. He reminded me that I'm still capable of giving a damn. still capable of being more than just a tired old man. I wish I could tell you I stayed in touch with him, that we became friends, kept in contact, had some kind of ending that made sense. But life don't always work like that. I heard from the shelter a few months after. They said he was transferred to a rehab center, said he was doing all right. I never saw him again, but I still carry him with me. Every time I see someone who looks lost, every time I feel myself drifting into that quiet space where I stop believing I matter. He shows up, not in a mystical way, just in memory, in that voice, that steady voice saying, you needed to remember who you were. So if you're watching this, and you feel like you've been forgotten, like nobody sees you anymore, let me be the one to say it. You matter. You're still in the fight. You still got something to give. You still got time. And if you've got a story like mine, something that changed you, something you never talk about but can't forget, I hope you'll share it. Not for the likes, not for the attention, but because maybe, just maybe, someone else out there is waiting to hear it, waiting to know they're not the only one who's ever felt lost, not the only one who's ever needed to be reminded that sometimes just showing up is the most important thing you'll ever do. That day changed me, not because I pulled someone out of a pile of bricks, but because he looked me in the eye and reminded me I was still here, still worth something. I don't talk about it much, but some things, they stay with you. And sometimes late at night when everything's quiet, I still hear him. I've been waiting for you.